It is 40,000 years ago. You are huddled in a cave and you've just noticed a rash you cannot explain to anyone, mostly because language hasn't fully arrived yet, and partly because there's no one around qualified to diagnose anything. No clinic, no pamphlet, just a fire, a suspicious cousin, and the creeping sense that something in your body has gone off script. Here's the question that should not have a survivable answer. How did a species with zero medicine, zero contraception, and an almost reckless enthusiasm for close physical contact make it through hundreds of thousands of years of invisible, microscopic warfare? The interesting one is that your immune system has apparently been running a full-time background check on every person you've ever been attracted to, and it never once asked your permission. Stick around and I'll walk you through why disease turned mate selection into a covert interview, why your ancestors' noses became unlicensed disease detectors, and why the thing you can't quite explain about liking or not liking someone's face is a 40,000-year-old scam detector still quietly running in the background. But first, that rash. Life before medicine was not a wellness retreat. Your ancestors were bald, slow, soft-skinned primates with mediocre eyesight and no claws, up against a world full of things that wanted to eat them. Their immune system was frankly the only weapon that reliably worked. No soap, no antiseptic, no idea what a pathogen even was. Just the vague, unsettling pattern that some people got sick after certain interactions and some didn't, which is a genuinely terrible way to run an early warning system, and yet it's what they had. Every wound was an open door. Every shared meal, shared bedding, shared breath was a transaction with something nobody could see. And close relationships, the kind required for reproduction, for social bonding, for basically everything that makes a tribe, came with their own quiet toll. A rotating cast of microorganisms that had been co-evolving with humans since before humans were fully human, patiently exploiting the one behavior evolution could never talk us out of. Nature didn't solve this with hygiene. It solved it with math. Have enough kids that some of them make it. Brutal, efficient, and completely uninterested in you personally, which is exactly the kind of planning you'd expect from a process with no brain and unlimited time. So faced with a threat they couldn't see, name, or treat, humans did what humans do. They built rules around it and told themselves the rules were about something else entirely. Watch a small hunter-gatherer band for long enough, and the patterns stop looking like coincidence. They start looking like folk epidemiology wearing a costume. A partner gets quietly avoided, and everyone insists it's about status, or family drama, or a bad feeling nobody can name. Courtship gets stretched out, wrapped in ritual and taboo. None of it labeled disease prevention, all of it functioning as disease prevention anyway. This is where humans start looking genuinely unhinged from an animal's point of view. A chimpanzee doesn't hold a ceremony before bonding with someone. It doesn't demand you prove you can hunt, tell a decent story, and survive an interrogation from an entire extended family first. We built an obstacle course, and whether or not anyone understood why, that obstacle course was filtering out risk the whole time. You can watch it happen in real time. A hunter comes back covered in blood. That is, thankfully, not his. The group studies him, not just the kill, but his skin, his eyes, the way he's moving, the sound of his voice. Is he shaking? Is he flushed? Is something wrong that nobody can name but everybody can feel? That's not romance. That's a background check run entirely on vibes. And vibes, it turns out, are an underrated diagnostic tool. Over tens of thousands of years, this unspoken screening didn't just shape behavior, it rewrote biology. Groups that developed even a mild aversion to visibly sick partners out-reproduced the ones that shrugged it off, and evolution, ruthless accountant that it is, kept the winning habit and deleted the rest. Now, here's where it gets a little uncomfortable. Your nose has been running background checks on every person you've ever been attracted to, since before you were born without so much as asking. There's a genuinely strange finding that keeps turning up in mate preference research. People are subtly repelled by the body odor of others whose immune genetics, specifically a set of genes called the major histocompatibility complex, closely match their own. This has nothing to do with hygiene or perfume. It's about genetic diversity. Offspring with a wider spread of immune genes can recognize a wider spread of pathogens, so somewhere along the way, the human nose turned into an unpaid immunologist, steering you toward variety and away from genetic redundancy without ever explaining itself. This is also, more or less, where disgust comes from. It feels like a moral reaction, wrinkled nose, instant judgment, but a lot of evolutionary psychologists now treat it as the original public health department. The things that reliably gross people out across basically every culture. Bodily fluids, open sores, spoiled food, a stranger who looks visibly sick, are almost all things that historically spread disease. The ancestors who felt appropriately disgusted by the right things survived to pass that reflex on. The ones who didn't. Sexual selection got dragged into this too. Clear skin, symmetry, energy, general vigor, these worked as walking advertisements for a functioning immune system. A kind of certificate nobody printed and everybody somehow learned to read. Meanwhile, genetics were running their own negotiation behind the scenes. Populations under different pathogen pressures developed different immune variants, and the more variety a group carried, the more resilient it was overall. Diversity wasn't a slogan here, it was survival math playing out in the background of every campfire romance for a few 100,000 years. The real turning point wasn't a discovery, it was a habit. At some point, deep in prehistory, humans started doing something almost no other species bothers with, forming long-term, publicly declared, mostly monogamous partnerships. On paper, that looks romantic. Functionally, it's closer to picking a small, known set of biological trading partners instead of an untraceable, unlimited one. Pair bonding didn't erase the risk, it just shrank the invisible network everyone was tangled up in, which is about as close to a firewall as prehistoric humans were ever going to get. Group living helped too, in its own morbid way. Small, tight bands meant outbreaks burned through a limited pool instead of spreading forever, and the constant social surveillance that made prehistoric life feel like living in a nosy small town also made it hard for anyone visibly sick to move around unnoticed. Gossip, basically, was an early contact tracing system, run entirely by aunties. Was any of this medicine? Not really, but it worked like one anyway, which might be one of the more impressive things a species that also thought thunder was personal has ever managed by accident. And you're still carrying all of it, just repackaged for a world with running water and antibiotics. That instant, hard to explain unease around someone who seems off before you can even say why. That's the old vibe check. Still running, still convinced it's protecting your gene pool at a bus stop. It's why we care, arguably too much about a new partner's history before letting them close. Feels like trust issues, is actually a very old, very literal risk assessment. It's also why attraction tracks vitality more than any checklist of features you could consciously write down, and why disgust still fires hard and fast around anything resembling illness, even a century after modern medicine made most of that danger irrelevant. Strip away the candles and the playlists, and dating is still partly an ancient interview your immune system insists on conducting without checking in with you first. You think you're deciding whether someone's interesting? Something underneath is deciding whether they're safe. So no, your ancestors didn't have condoms, clinics, or any real idea what a virus was. What they had was disgust, gossip, ritual, and a nose-running unauthorized background checks on everyone they met. Somehow, stacked together, that improvised system worked well enough that you're here to hear about it. The impossible question was how humans survived threats they couldn't even see. The quietly funny answer is that they built an entire emotional infrastructure. Disguised as romance, gossip, and taste, that worked as public health policy long before anyone had a word for public health. You are, in the most literal sense possible, the descendant of extremely picky ancestors. Choose your next crush accordingly.